Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Hard Tales. Today I'm going to talk about, rather share about, the most important, transformative, yet the most neglected phase of the medical journey of an aspirant. Yes, that is the internship. I've seen over years that in institutes where the internship is quite heavy and taxing, students assume that this 1 year has to be scut work, manual labor, and there is not going to be much of studying and learning, and so they are just waiting for the year to end. After that, they start preparing for competitive exams. Well, I don't say that this is a wrong way to do it, but I feel it is a very limited approach towards this whole medical training journey. Yes, mind it, till this point of becoming an intern, you were learning medicine. And from this point on, you have entered the phase of training into medicine. I understand that once you enter the hospital as a qualified intern, you have certain dreams and expectations of how things should be. The wanting to feel like a doctor, the feeling of treating a patient, and that enthusiasm kind of is curbed, mostly because of the way things are going around, the chaos, toxic seniors at times, a non-cooperative co-intern most of the times, and you expect people to teach you in a systematic way or have a methodic approach towards things and management protocols, but most of the times it doesn't happen that way, and feeling dejected is quite common. But I don't want you all to make it a reason or an excuse to just go through this phase of internship somehow. Rather, in this video, I'll share you certain insights into how can we grow through this period of internship. So the first part is the art of finding opportunities. It's a very common scenario that happens to me more often now as a cardiac surgery consultant. An intern comes to me. Well, I don't know he's an intern, but he has his lab coat and he has a patient. He has a thick file with him, and then he just puts the file on the table, and I expect him to at least talk a little about what the patient is. And when I skim through the file and ask a few questions to him, the first response comes is, "Sir, I'm an intern." So that is kind of used as an excuse. Let us break this norm. Let us talk about what can be done here. What is the opportunity that should be sought by that intern? So you are with this patient for 15 minutes. You are walking from your ward, taking the patient with you to the consultant. So you have 10 to 15 minutes with the patient and with his file. When you walk towards the senior consultant for a referral, just skim through the file. Just see what is the primary diagnosis. When he came to the hospital, what was his presenting complaint, what investigations were done, and what actually happened to the patient, and why am I literally going with this patient to the consultant for a referral. Unfortunately, in the Indian system, it is kind of just to make things faster, you make an intern accompany the patient. So that is not the whole point here. The major point that is to be noted here is that this is a system wherein a qualified medico is accompanying a patient to present the case in brief to a senior consultant, to an expertise, and that is not happening because that is not how the intern is seeing the whole thing. So that 10 to 15 minutes, I want you to invest into the patient's file and brief about the patient to the consultant for whom you have gotten the reference. However bad it is, just try. Most of the times you will come up with someone who will either just bash you off or who might encourage that attempt. In either of the cases, either you get to learn something from the consultant, or you at least now know why you came with the patient to this consultant and what has he written as his expert advice. So part one was finding opportunities. You have to find opportunities into the mundane tasks of the day. Another example would be in your competitive exam preparations, you have certain facts to learn, certain numbers to mug up, certain one-liners that you need to know, names of scientists, dates, events. So these objective factual questions can be amalgamated into your routine work that you do in the world. How we used to do, we had a small group of friends who had beautiful ways of coming up with how to make things interesting and finding opportunities to learn. So that whole sheet of dates or factual things will be kept alongside the blood collection list on the table. And when we go to draw blood from one patient, we have kind of gone through 3 dates or 3 events or 3 facts, and the whole process involves recalling those 3 dates or facts. And the moment we cross someone who is into this whole pact, I tell him my 3 dates of day this, or whatever is the scientist, or whatever is the fact, and he tells me what he is also learning. So it becomes interesting, and I think that is one more way of finding opportunities to learn. The second aspect in the same context is the art of being inquisitive. You should learn to ask why and how and question everything that you see in the world. I don't want you to go through your books, sit in a corner and read about CA colon or what is metastasis or neuroendocrine tumor. I just want you to see around the hospital and ask questions to your own self. I bet that the intern who is watching this has seen an NS bottle at least 1700 times if you are at least 4 to 5 months into your internship, or even before that. And if I ask you how much is the sodium content in that 500 ml of NS, people start thinking and they're confused. 130, 134, 154. And then I ask them, what is the unit of that 154? What is the content in RL? How does it differ from NS? So don't wait for your competitive exams to come nearer. These are certain things that you can make a habit to just read labels of everything in the ward or the ICU or the theater or in the hospital, anywhere, and ask yourself questions. In the same context, you must have put a pink IV cannula, an 18 gauge IV cannula, to almost hundreds of patients. The cannula has a flow rate written on the backside of it. We have never seen, but I want you to start going through that details, because eventually that are certain one-liners that are going to be asked in competitive exams. People get confused in what is a green IV cannula, what is the gauge of that, what is a purple one, what is the blue one. So in spite of doing something 100 and 120 times, you still don't know the details of that particular action that you're doing, or the aspects of that action that you're doing. So that tells me, or if that is happening with you, that tells me that you have not put in much of thought into the activity. And if you start doing that, it is a radical shift of the whole approach towards whatever you are doing. So the art of being inquisitive, you have to ask questions. Another example that has come to me is when you're supposed to do a dressing of a wound. Most common thing that we use is a betadine. So first question that should come to your mind is, what is betadine? What is povidone into the iodine? What is the constituent? How does it act? So the moment you start asking these questions to yourself, 2 things happen. One is there is no other erroneous or no other disturbing thought into your mind which clutters your whole action or your overall approach. You have a very systematic way of thinking towards whatever you're doing. And the second thing that happens is you kind of revise certain things subconsciously. The next dressing that you do, you know the constituent of betadine, you know what is povidone, you know how it acts, and you just go on scaling up. Then your mind asks you what is acryflavin. It asks you what is hydrogen peroxide. It wants to know more about what are the healing agents on the dressing trolley. Why does it have silver into it? So these all are the scaling up of the mind once you have trained it into being inquisitive. The next art that I would like to share is the art of making things interesting. Well, this is something which has significantly helped me throughout my journey of being a cardiac surgeon today and even now. So, not always in your life or in your work you will be in a place which you like, or you'll be with a person whom you like, or you'll be in a situation which you like. Not always, rather it doesn't happen most of the times. But if you inculcate this art of making things interesting, your adaptability to change is drastically improved. And if that really manifests well, it won't matter with which person you are, or at what place you are, or in what situation you are. You will make things interesting for yourself, especially about work. Let us talk about work. Instead of explaining what this is, I'll just try to tell you how I came up with this. So being a trainee into cardiac surgery in first year of my residency, we were supposed to be going to the blood bank for almost 2/3 of the day. We were into the blood bank, rushing for blood and transfusing, and just the cycle keeps on going. So the common scenario in a blood bank is people from different departments, different posts, intern, postgraduates, and at my place we also had to go to get the blood from the blood bank officer. So there is a huge crowd, everybody waiting for their blood packets to be served, and the seniors on the phones trying to bug everyone to get the blood as soon as possible. So it's a chaos. Very early I realized that I'm not going to be a part of this chaos. Anyways, it is going to take 10-15 minutes for my blood request to be issued. Let me spend this 15 minutes more wisely. So I used to go around the blood bank, and then on second or third day I found the main hall, the main auditorium, having several photos hanged on the wall of eminent scientists into transfusion medicine, eminent histopathologists, eminent personalities in transfusion medicine, and they had written a short note below the photos. So every time I used to go, I used to just Google or go through the Wikipedia page of the particular scientist or the researcher. I used to go deep into his childhood, his early life, his nationality, how his father and his peer shaped his whole approach towards medicine, and then how he got into transfusion medicine. That 10-15 minutes would just go off being with that particular scientist or the researcher. And when my turn used to come, I used to get my blood and go back. So what happened eventually was, the more I used to go to the blood bank, I started knowing more about these people. I just knew the word Karl Landsteiner, but his entire history and the depth of it was so interesting. Even Weinberg and many such others. But what happened eventually was, I started looking forward to go to the blood bank because I wanted to know something more about someone else today. So that whole mundane thing of a super specialty candidate going to the blood bank and asking and requesting for blood, which also could have been another approach of doing the same action, was done into a more interesting way. So this is one insight that I wanted to give you about making things interesting. And it need not be very logical also. You can make it to a very basic illogical approach. For example, at times when I was supposed to walk from my super specialty block to the canteen, I used to just do a mental calculation of how many steps would it take to reach the canteen. If it was 120, I used to count and check if my guess was right, from hospital to the canteen, then the canteen to the library. So we are going to be into a very taxing, a mentally exhausting branch henceforth. We are into it. So certain tools like this and many others are going to just make things interesting for us. Instead of cribbing and complaining, and instead of giving your mind that space to crib and complain, keep it occupied with something creative, productive, proactively. So that was my bit on the practical tips of an approach towards internship.